Welcome back to Get Down to Business. I'm your host, Shalom Klein. Thrilled to be joined once again by Professor David Gunkel, professor at Northern Illinois University, who has a focus on technology and cyberspace. Fascinating topics. Professor Gunkel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I know you've written extensively on this topic about companies using new technology to monitor every move in the workplace. We've been hearing about stores and businesses tracking customers, but really employees too?
Yeah, so, there's some history here because worker monitoring goes way back to the 19th and early 20th centuries, in which businesses and manufacturers were trying to get better managerial approaches to worker activity. And so they would film workers and they would do time motion studies and ergonomic studies and this sort of business to make their business more effective and more productive. Additionally, the current right to privacy in the workplace under U.S. law is really quite weak for workers. Right now, if you look at the way the law is written and the sort of case law has developed, your employer can basically monitor everything you do as long as it has a legitimate business purpose. And that is everything from read your snail mail to read your email to watch you as you're working on the internet and record your click streams to videotape your activities in the facility. And we're just seeing an explosion of this as employers start to really use the technology that's become recently available to monitor even closer.
Oh man! So wristbands that are tracking employee hand motions are starting to be implemented. You imply that it may even happen. Implanted microchips under workers' skin. Is this just a something futuristic, or is this something that we may actually start to hear companies starting to talk about openly?
Yeah, it's not only not futuristic, it's happening right now, and it's been going on for quite some time. Amazon recently patented a Fitbit-like wristband that is meant to monitor not only employee health, but also hand movement so that they can work with employees to get more efficiency out of what they do in the warehouses and in working with packages and other kinds of things at Amazon. Going beyond the sort of wristband, you have the implantables. Right now, just not too long ago, I think about a year ago, 3 Square Market in Wisconsin, a vending machine company, offered their employees a voluntary program where they could have a little RFID chip about the size of a grain of rice inserted into the piece of flesh between their index finger and their thumb. And the idea would be this would be your ID, and you could open doors, you could gain access to the copy machine, you could pay for things in the lunchroom. And the idea would be everywhere you'd have to take out your ID and swipe it, now you could just hold up your hand, and the RFID chip would be read, and that would gain access. And it sounds sort of like a science fiction dystopia, but a good number of employees at 3 Square Market signed up for the program.
So certainly many of our listeners must be wondering if these technologies are, you consider it a major breakthrough that will improve the employee experience. Or is this crossing a line when it comes to personal privacy and safety? Where is that line drawn, and is that topic still being written? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think right now we are seeing the beginning of a debate about how to balance, on the one hand, the needs and the interests of the employer, and then on the other hand, the needs and interests of the employee. And you're right, the employer has a need to make their operations more efficient and to be more productive. The employee, on the other hand, needs to have control over his or her privacy. And I think we're going to see a big back and forth as we try to figure this out around these new technologies. So I think we're just at the beginning of a debate that will go on for quite some time.
Wow. So Professor Gunkel, we're going to a lot more questions for you. But where did you initially hear about this? I know your focus is on technology and cyberspace. What are some of the other things that you're following?
So one of the interesting things is Fitbit, the little health monitoring wristband that all of us seem to like for monitoring our exercise, our steps, etc. They are beginning to offer packages to corporations and saying, if you take on the Fitbit program, we'll give you a employee wellness situation where we can help you track your employee exercise or employee exertion, and you may even be able to use this to negotiate for lower insurance costs. So IBM has done this. A number of other places have done this right now on voluntary basis. It is not yet mandatory, but again, a number of employees sign up because they get a free Fitbit in the process. So Fitbit says, we'll give everybody a free Fitbit. All they have to do is participate in this program for employee wellness for a period of time. And this kind of incentivizes people to get involved. Another organization out in San Francisco called Aperio, it's a startup, and they actually use this Fitbit as a way of tracking and gathering a whole bunch of data on their employees, and they use this to negotiate a 6% reduction in cost for insurance, and they passed on that savings both to the corporation and to the employees. So everybody got a little extra for allowing the monitoring to happen. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this going on where insurance will want people to start using these monitors for health as a way of incentivizing people to do more proactive things as opposed to reactive things regarding their health care.
Absolutely. And please don't say anything too bad about Fitbit because, I don't want to be scared off completely. And I know that a lot of our listeners are pacing back and forth listening to the program, trying to make sure that they get the last 100 of their 10,000 steps in. So you specialize on information and communication technology. Once again, we're chatting with David Gunkel, professor at Northern Illinois University. Professor David Gunkel, I've got a lot more questions for you. Can you stick around for just for another few minutes?
Perfectly fine.
Absolutely. Well, Chicago, we'll be right back on Get Down to Business. Don't touch the dial. More with David Gunkel about technology in the workplace coming up.
Hey, spring is here.
Welcome back. We are chatting, continuing our conversation with David Gunkel, professor, educator, scholar, and author at Northern Illinois University. David, we've been chatting about companies using new technology to monitor every move in the workplace. So what companies have been the early adopters of this technology?
So some of the early adopters were IBM. One of them I just mentioned before, Aperio. You see some stuff happening with some other sort of large companies like Google, et cetera. So places that are normally very tech-oriented are some of the early adopters. But it's not just tech companies. I think this Three Square Markets in Wisconsin was kind of an outlier because they're not a Silicon Valley startup. They're not a major player in information technology. They're a vending machine company. So I think we're seeing it across the board, and we're seeing it from a lot of different sectors simultaneously.
And when might some of our listeners or friends start to see this technology in their own office?
So they'll see it as soon as there is an incentive to investigate it and experiment with it. And the incentive is things like reduced work, loss of work, productivity, efficiency, but also on the employee side, there are some efficiencies that are available, and the idea of being able to have easier access to the facility, to not have to always swipe your ID, et cetera. So as soon as there's a tipping point for convenience, where the convenience factor seems to outweigh the trade-offs for privacy, I think we're going to see a rather high adoption rate.
So we still call this new technology. So that means that certainly patents have been filed. Why are companies developing patents in this? Is this sort of a one-size-fits-all, and multiple companies might be taking advantage of and embracing this new technology in the workplace? Or are we going to see Amazon creating their own process? I know I mentioned earlier, I've been hearing about wristbands that are tracking employee hand motions, and then maybe even microchips. Are there different forms of this technology, and are companies like Amazon trying to create their own?
Right. So you can see the broad spectrum of possibility here. You have some turnkey operators who will just provide this as a service, and I think Fitbit is a really good example of that with regards to their wristband. Amazon is not satisfied with what's commercially available on the market, so they patented their own wristband and will most likely go into production of that in the future. The RFID chip that was used at Three Square Markets has been around for a long time, at least close to a decade. We use it with our dogs to tag our dogs so that when our dog gets lost, they can be scanned and you can identify the owner. Using it in humans is brand new, but it has gained FDA approval for this use, and as a result, it's something that is being explored by a number of different manufacturers and vendors who are offering it as a product to different employers to utilize. So I think we're going to see a lot of innovation happening with companies that have some involvement in tech, and then adoption from the companies that are not tech companies, but shopping around for solutions to provide their employees and their operations with this kind of technology.
Well, listen, I think that technology is a good thing, and people need to embrace technology and continue to innovate and adapt. At the same time, there has to be a point where perhaps we've gone too far. And David, I'm curious, just as we wrap up our conversation, I'm curious if laws are going to have to be drafted, or are you already seeing any legislation either on the state level, local level, or even on the national level regarding the limitations? I know there's been a lot of conversation about tracking employees' social media use. What about literally movements?
Yes. So, one of the things I tell my students all the time is that technology moves at light speed and the law moves at pen and paper speed. So we are in a situation where the technology is far beyond what the current law covers, and trying to catch the law up is going to take a number of years to sort of make that happen.
Yeah. David, we're going to have to leave it there. I do want to encourage people to check out your website, gunkelweb.com, Gunkel web.com. We appreciate your time on the program. Check out my website, shalomklein.com. Check out our sponsors, Tandem HR. We'll be back next Sunday, 6 p.m. right here on AM 560. To success, let's get down to business.
Let Tandem